Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Serotonin Receptor. This is your host, Serotonin. Today is Saturday, March the 2nd, 2019, or so they say. This show is also our first episode, and we will be carrying a slightly different format tonight than we will be in the future. But first, my disclaimer. Although I am a trained psychotherapist, Serotonin Receptor is a show dedicated to practical counseling and support for those who are just awakening to the reality that we are living in. So if you've just traveled down the rabbit hole and are starting to realize that the whole world is not what it seems, that our politicians, our movie stars, and our rock stars have all been heavily compromised with a very disturbing religion, quote unquote, and that we are possibly not even living on a globe. There's also that. There's so many things. But you're in good company. If you're questioning everything, you found the right place. So like I said, the show itself is not psychotherapy. I do want to go over a couple of little things, though, I believe it pertains to it's a very similar act in our awakening, that things will seem worse before they get better. Right now, you might be going through a period, especially if you're just awakening to all this new reality, so to speak, or all of this newly understood reality. It may feel like things are going to get worse before they get better for a time. So when we're dealing with trauma, we have a tendency to bury trauma. When we're dealing with secrets or underhanded behavior of any kind, it tends to stay buried. In order to dig things out, you do have to get into the mud, you have to get down, you do have to get a bit dirty, and you're going to get some stuff on you. It's going to probably feel pretty awful when you hold that toxic thing, that when you finally get to the place where either, something you went through was buried, or if it's just a hard truth that you have to swallow about yourself or about the world around you, it's going to feel pretty stinky right now. It's going to feel pretty awful, and you're going to feel sick a lot of the time. But I would like to say, as someone who's made it down the rabbit hole, come out the rabbit hole many times for air, and has pretty much gone back down in and stayed there, it really does get better, and it really does get easier with time. It is traumatic. It really is very traumatic when you first realize that everything you've ever been told was a lie, and that there are people on TV lying to your face right now. But you never really get over it, but you learn to live with it. It's like the death of a loved one. You'll never not care. You'll never be completely okay with it, but you'll learn to keep going. And that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for keeping our life in perspective while this sort of tsunami of truth is going to kind of overtake our whole society. So there will be people hopefully listening to this eventually who have been through this already, and there's going to be lots of people who have never and are possibly panicking. So that said, if you are really panicking, you do probably need to see a mental health practitioner in your local area. I'm not going to tell you who you should see and who you shouldn't see, but I will say that there are certain types of psychology, psychiatry, do tend to work within the medicated system. So you might not be super interested in that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going down the medication route, although everybody should do what they need to do for themselves and their bodies. So I do not judge, and I do not like to make any blanket statements about stuff like that, but counselors and also, social, not social work, sorry, counselors, and oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. I'm going to have to come back to that. But counselors do offer more practical um, advice and more practical solutions. So they tend to be more proactive and like action based, whereas therapy is like generally has been, we're not going to disturb you. We're going to kind of like, we'll let you live in this world of um, your own creation until you're ready to come out of it. So, and that was a little bit the reason why I decided to leave my private practice was I began to get to a point where I was seeing that my particular career choice was not actually helping anyone get better. It was just a way to feed people back into the system, feeling like a victim, and really not kind of taking care of oneself or dealing with consequences of one's actions. So there you go. If you are in anxiety and you are sort of interested in this kind of thing, I would recommend doing pursuing some meditation, some Tai Chi, things that are calming and relaxing to you that aren't to do with mental health necessarily. It's something that can help you kind of keep things going and flowing while your body is adjusting. Tai Chi is considered to be like the pearl of the martial arts world. And partially it's because it's so accessible for people of all, ages and abilities. But it's a very gentle way of using both physical exercise and mental stillness to work in tandem. So I would really recommend that, especially if you're someone who's a little bit nervous about meditation. I would actually go with Tai Chi. So okay, so I do have a couple of points that I wanted to talk about. The show is still really new, so I didn't actually get any questions sent to me this week, but it's not going to stop me. I'm really dedicated to following my path. I actually have left two career paths because they were not right, and one of them was working as a therapist, and the other one was running an alternative health and healing space for mental health practitioners and divination practitioners. And so I'm very much dedicated to listening to my inner voice and to what source God wants me to do. And I feel that this is the path that makes the most sense. Um, and so, regardless of having any questions, I will persevere. You will still have an episode each week, and hopefully, we will have people participating, so that I can really help fulfill the need that may be out there. I mean, maybe I'm making a judgment, but I want to be there for the people who will be going through or are going through a lot of the alarming and traumatic stages of awakening that I went through. So I'm doing this because it was tough, and I wouldn't want to do it again. I would like to have someone out there to help me over the pitfalls. Um, so okay, so two of the things I wanted to talk about actually, um, are the intimate relationships that we are involved in, sorry, and what do we do if we are involved with someone who does not approve or doesn't want to hear this newly understood reality that you're experiencing. This is super, super common. I think this is probably the number one issue with awakening is how isolating it can be. And, it sort of feels like if you're like at the bank of a rushing river and there was a couple of rafts there and you just got on one raft, you didn't even mean to, and the raft kind of unties from the dock and just starts going down the river. And even if your best friend or your lover, husband, wife, partner, mother, father, best friend, whoever it is, was able to get on that next raft, and undo the ropes and go down the river, they would be very rarely would they be able to catch up with you. You've already gone, you're kind of down the river, and they might not even choose to get on that raft. They might just stand on the bank and watch you go and be like, well, that looks dangerous, so I'm not going. And that particular situation, I mean, kind of takes care of itself. Unfortunately, it is, can be very disheartening and really depressing for some people that care very much for the person who is not ready to wake up. But in some situations, that actually might be the best outcome, because it really is hard doing this with someone, awakening with someone. So I'm not trying to be a downer, but acknowledging that there's a really good chance that you might not be able to awaken alongside us with someone, that's a pretty distinct possibility. Now, some of us out there have cultivated our friendships so incredibly well that it's not that difficult to bring somebody else on the journey. So I do say that we need to use caution. If you are awakening, it's because you have decided to. You made some kind of a soul contract with yourself, your higher self, or source God, to awaken at this time, and this is what you're doing. You are your own rose unfolding in the garden, and you cannot go around and start pulling on the other roses to unfold along with you. So I hate to say it, but there is a definite, buck up and pull up your socks, and you're going to have to do this on your own element to this. Awakening and our life is a path that we generally walk alone. We're not often born alongside someone. Even twins are born at separate times, and we all leave this place slightly separately. Even if we were all to die at one time, we're still in our own separate bodies until that moment that the body is dead. So I would definitely say, okay, so you're awakening, you're in your process of awakening, and your partner is not awakening. Number one, absolutely highly recommended to connect with people in the comment section of the YouTube videos that you're watching, the people who are gentle. Don't seek out bullies at this time. Don't seek out aggressive people. You are going to feel so angry some days. You're going to be overcome with grief other days. Process it all. Let yourself cry. Give yourself sometimes the opportunity to cry. Don't necessarily seek out more of this disturbing information if that's what it is. I do think you need to do what you need to do. So if you feel like you need to know more about child sex trafficking and you're still kind of reeling from even finding out about it, then you need to learn more about it so that you can educate yourself as to who is who and what is what. But be gentle with yourself. Be your most protective version of yourself to yourself. And very often we don't do that. We like to tear ourselves down. I don't think we like to, but we do. We just do tear ourselves down incredibly. And so one thing I would like to recommend, without advocating, sort of splitting one's self into distinct personalities, but I do think it's important, because that is a terrible class to go down as well. I think it's really important to treat yourself like a child at this point. But I would highly recommend connecting with people that are more awake and asking questions and seeking out a little bit of support. Now, that said, I do want to caution people with the sort of messiah complex. So there are a lot of people out there giving good advice and bad advice and real intel and fake intel and disinformation and all kinds of stuff, and they're really amping up their confusion game right now. So use your discernment. If somebody doesn't feel right, they're not right, go. There's a lot of talk about going with your gut, but there's something going on with the solar plexus, so I don't agree with going with your gut. I think go with your heart is really important, but it depends on who you're prioritizing with your heart. And I really cannot stress this enough. Thomas Williams said this a couple of weeks ago. I believe he says this fairly often, but he says, never put anyone above your own heart. And I think that what he means by that is don't ever place value on someone else more than yourself. So that said, if you have an inkling that somebody isn't the right person for you to be listening to or following or what have you, then you're probably right. Very often these days, anyone who's really kind of clued in to where we're going and what's going on, they're going to want and feel very compelled to be of highest service to others, not to self. They're generally not going to approve of any dirty tactic. Not like, okay, if they're going to stoop that low, we'll stoop low too. No, those are not the people who are worth following right now. The people who are worth following right now have unbelievably high standards of moral understanding. They're much more dedicated to helping people because it's just they're following the light inside them, the goodness inside them, the positivity inside them, because that's where we're moving. We're moving into an incredibly positive utopia kind of place. This is where we're raising our vibration, so we're becoming lighter, like as opposed to denser, and we're becoming more loving. We're more love, but love is not without logic. So love is the protection of vulnerable people. It's not well, don't hate and don't judge, and yeah, don't hate and don't judge, that's true, but love it's a hijacked word these days. It's a very complicated one to get into, but it's something that the Luciferian New Age movement is really pushing for. And if that kind of blew your mind a little bit, the New Age movement is not, it is not for goodness. It is not for good stuff. It is for bringing in the light bearer. That's why they're always like love and light. And the light bearer, of course, is the morning sun, it's Lucifer. So I will get much more into what is going on with the New Age movement in another episode. There's a whole thing going on that started off in the 70s, I believe it was. Yeah, they're basically fulfilling their agreement now. As is so many people, based on books. So, there's a reason why it's biblical prophecy and Nostradamus is right and all that stuff. They wrote the playbooks like 400 to 500 years ago of how things were going to go down, because they organized the last 400 to 500 years. And I don't mean just the Rothschilds, but there's the Pacers, there's there's so many people, the Black Venetian nobility lines. It goes way back, okay? So there was a calendar reset, Pope Gregory, the Gregorian calendar. There was language reset back then. There was a lot of reset, and I think that they reset it was the something calendar, and the Julian calendar, and then the Gregorian calendar. So there was 2 reset calendars within like 100 years or something. And basically, between the Julian and the Gregorian, they kind of figured it all out. So there's a reason why, and again, there's a reason why the King James version of the Bible is the only one you can get. They're not going to make other ones. They're not going to publish it. So if you're sitting there going through your scripture and going, oh, well, this and that, and they proved this and they proved that, the unfortunate reality is that 400 to 500 years ago, they edited from different languages a specific version, and this is the only one they allow to be published now. And verbatim, they are following Revelations. So, it's like Nostradamus. Well, there's a reason why, he's the most celebrated of all of the, predictions, all the predictors, or whatever his word, whatever, is because, well, he was a Mason, actually. He was a Freemason. So he just wrote the book, and they just like followed along, same with George Orwell. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent now. So, back to the original question. What do we do when the people we love are not waking up at the same time as us? So number one, go within. Number one, you should absolutely be looking after yourself, dealing, number one, with your own trauma, and number two, with your own path and your own awakening. So the first place to get support, like I said, is online. Look for people in the comment section. Look around YouTube. There's lots of different movements of truth and people opening their eyes. YouTube people who have high sub counts, like in the tens of thousands, generally are being promoted these days. YouTube has really coming down very heavily on people, so they're not going to give positive algorithms to people who are like speaking outside of the narrative. So just be aware of that. If you have, if you're following someone with high sub counts, I would maybe find someone who's on a similar topic that you vibe with that has lower sub counts. That's just my rule of thumb. Anybody who interviews ex-CIA people, there is no such thing as ex-CIA. It does not exist. That's like ex-Masons. They don't exist. It's the Hotel California. Once you're in, you're not allowed to leave. So if someone is ex-CIA, they are doing the narrative of the controllers. Anybody who interviews them is doing the narrative of the controllers. It doesn't matter how cute they are, how nice they smile, or how free they act. They are doing the work of the controllers. Okay? I don't know if all of you can read between the lines there, but no ex-CIA. It does not exist. Okay. There are more extreme versions of when people don't understand what you're going through as you awaken. And this can manifest in ways that people may accuse you of having mental health issues, being unstable. And I definitely would say this is the most extreme of cases. It's the most alarming of cases, and it can be really scary. So that said, if this should happen to you, the way you react to it is going to really dictate how things go for you moving forward. So it's really, really important. I'm gonna get into this a little bit more as I'm just finishing up this one more piece, and then I'm going to talk about support methods. So how you react to other people reacting to you is super important. Okay. If you freak out, fly off the handle, start screaming, getting panicky, it could really cost you your stable life. I mean, it really depends on how things go. If you are able to meet any of this disbelief with calmness, proof, facts, it's going to go in a completely different direction for you. You're going to be waking up them rather than them, calling you 5150 or, if you should have dependents, having, Child Protective Services show up. So I think before you really share any of this information with people, going through a process of normalizing is really crucial, and it's very lonely and very isolating. So I would recommend um, depending on what the topic is, I guess, because that's the other thing. It really depends what you're what you're struggling with in the moment. Um, Alternative history is something that a lot of people have been waking up to. That people are realizing that every single thing we've ever learned about human history is being completely fabricated. And interestingly enough, this has been the most alarming um, and most devastating for so many people. And there are definitely um, channels and people who produce content that do it in such a way that's very gentle, and they do it in such a way that's very beautiful, and there's a lot of content, and it's much easier to handle than uh, some of the other topics, like when we're talking about satanic sacrifice and child sex trafficking. I mean, it is absolutely devastating news to hear that this exists, and it's a really, really difficult to find a path that is both informative and comforting about this, because there's really nothing comforting about this whatsoever. Now, on the one hand, I do want to say that some of the intel that I do listen to, which comes from the Thomas Williams Truth, Honor, and Integrity show, has stated that a large portion of the child sex trafficking operations has been completely undermined. It's being shut right down ever since Trump took over, and all of those executive orders, those sealed indictments, as well. They're all in process of taking care of a lot of this stuff, and there was a lot of off-planet trafficking as well, and that has almost completely finished. So although we don't get to hear all of the good news, there's a lot of good news out there about that. So do take that into account. With the heavier stuff, go slow, be gentle with yourself. Um, if you have a dependent in your life or a vulnerable person that depends on you, imagine yourself as being them as well. So begin to care for yourself as though you are your own parent and you are also your own child. So please, I don't want to advocate for split personalities or anything like that. That's an incredibly dangerous path to go down. But when trying to wade through all this information, I think it's really, really crucial to act towards yourself as though you are your own parent. So, I don't, not role playing, not self talk, but just, if your small child watched a scary show, you wouldn't let them watch it again real soon, right? You might make them wait. You might, find something else to feed the soul a bit, something to bring back some normalcy. But there's also that idea of, once you've fallen off the horse, you're going to get back up on it again. And the truth is like that. You might want to really run away and not deal with it. But this is what is happening in our world. The veil is going to slip completely at some point, and it's going to be nothing but truth coming at us. If the poop is hitting the fan, eventually the fan won't be there, and the poop will be getting thrown directly at us. And you're going to want to know how to clean it off you, or duck, or get out of the way. And that's all about practice and caring, self-care, and bolstering and training. And this is it's like a marathon, and we're going to train together in this marathon. So as much as I don't want people to be holding on to stuff and suffering in silence and isolating themselves, I do think it's really important to, there is a community, like I've said, there is a community, an awakened community out there in the world, the big wide world web, the World Wide Web, that's it. And there are some really great people out there who are incredibly supportive and who have been awakened for a long time, and I really want to recommend that this is the first pillar of support that you seek, are the people who are already awakened. Um, Educate yourself, spoon feed yourself. Once you can handle more than a spoon, then cup feed yourself. And then if you can do the feast, then feast, because there's so much information and there's so many different dishes. I have been very awake for about 18 years now, more than that now, going 21 years now. And I'm still learning about stuff that I've never heard of before. And that's another big piece, is you're going to come very quickly to the conclusion that you will never fully know everything. And as much as you can kind of not, like, it's not so surprising anymore, it gets still pretty shocking most days, like the stuff that's going on. And you will be shocked. You will be shocked again. But as you get used to living down the rabbit hole, that shock won't be so much each time. It will become more fascination than shock. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there for sort of the Q&A. That was, I guess, the whole show is intended to be Q&A. But seeing as I didn't have any Q's, my A's are a little bit shorter this week. So a couple of quick things I wanted to really talk about, self-empowerment and bolstering, and this is the biggest thing that I wanted to get into right now, is I feel that it's really, really important to firstly acknowledge that you are a soul having a human experience. There's a pretty good chance that soon we might just be a soul having a soul experience. I mean, there's a good chance, well, we all will, I mean, at some point. And I don't really know what's going to happen in the next little while. We've been hearing about a new Earth, the event, people's frequencies being raised, so a lightening of the body, and a higher vibration and a higher frequency. I have no insight on any of this. I'm just like you guys about that stuff. I have no idea. But I have a lot of feelings about things, and I wanted to talk a little bit about personal power. So the first, there's a couple of announcements and there's a couple of recommendations. So I'm going to start off with the recommendations, and I'm going to end with the announcements, I think, today. So the first recommendation that I wanted to put out there is that you learn to shield yourself. You are, like I just said, you are a soul having a human experience. It is very likely that when you dream, when you sleep at night, your soul is going into another frequency, is visiting another place, another consciousness. And shielding your body, your human body, is super important. As we pass through the third to the fourth to the fifth dimensions. Fourth is the one that's filled with the lower astral baddies, so all of those unhappy entities that make us do terrible things live in the fourth. And so as we're ascending, apparently we can become much more obvious to these particular entities. So shielding is super, super important. When you shield, it's really important to remember that that basically the soul doesn't feel objects. We are not limited by that. So when you shield yourself, sometimes the shape that you envision around your body will have to kind of go under the floor to encompass your feet. Or if you're lying in bed, it might have to go into the mattress to kind of encompass your backside or your front side, or however it is you sleep or you lie or whatever. This is my most recommended shielding technique, comes from the Truth, Honor, and Integrity website, the Thomas Williams website. I will be putting links into the Spreaker description bit for you guys to check that out. The other thing is Oh, that's right. Okay, so about the shielding technique. So one thing to be really wary of is that you can have implants and not know it. Okay, so nanoparticles are in the chemtrails, they're in our food, they put them in everything. Apparently there's nanoparticles in our clothing now. So basically what you want to do when you're shielding up, okay? What I do is I kind of imagine, like, you know that caduceus, it's the, this two snakes around the staff. You see it all the time. It's like one of those esoteric symbols that's supposed to be like, health, but it actually means something totally different. I have to ask the Anunnaki about that one. I'm not entirely sure, but anyway, I always imagine this sort of helix thing, like coming up from my feet up to my head. I like to do a lemon shape. Apparently Thomas Williams likes to do like a cone shape that starts with a flat platform beneath his feet and then goes up in a cone. But what he recommended is that you kind of blast your body back and forth DNA style, helix going up, right? Before you seal yourself up in the shield. And the sort of blasting helix shape thing is literally like short circuiting all of your chips, all of your implants inside your body, should you have any. Because you don't want to shield in the implants. And then you do that before you go to sleep. Okay. And another thing that he has on his website, which is really cool, is also a grounding technique. And essentially what you do is you can turn your head as well as your eyes, which will be closed at this point, to the left, and you breathe in, and you turn your eyes all the way to the right. You can turn your head at the same time as you breathe out. And as you're breathing in, what you're going to do is you're going to kind of collect. You're going to envision that that you're collecting all of the negative energy, all of the bad energy, or all of the traumatizing energy, all of the energetic energy, just anything that felt yucky. Really just all the yuckies. And you're going to breathe it in, scoop up the yuckies, breathe out the yuckies as you breathe, and you turn your eyes to the right. And whenever I do this, I always imagine myself as like a sprinkler, those like, you're breathing out like, and that's kind of how I do it. So that's my little fun thing. And apparently, when you're grounding, you need to be literally like feet on the floor, no shoes. So I don't know if you guys do earthing or grounding, but that's basically connecting with a wood or outdoors environment. So wood works really well. Soil is better. Trees are great. Obviously, grass is good. Leather, you can ground with the planet through leather, which explains moccasins and why you shouldn't probably be pursuing rubber-soled shoes, because it keeps you away from the electric grounding of the planet. I know, it's very interesting stuff. Anyway, so you literally want to be earthed. You want to have your feet on the floor, and you want to be activating your I don't want to say new heart, but your ascended heart center, which is just a little bit more central than where your actual human physical heart is in your rib cage. So it's a little bit closer to the center point. So grounding is great to do. You want to ground to Mother Earth. This is our planet. She has adopted us. Most of us souls were not originally incarnated on this planet. We are all immigrants here, all of us, everyone on this planet. I don't know if there ever was an original species, or if they are, I don't think they're still here. But Earth is an immigration planet. So, and she's a mother. She's alive and sentient, and she loves us incredibly much. And if you are awake enough to be listening to my podcast, then she knows who you are, and you know who she is. And she wants us to ascend with her. She's chosen us to wake up and ascend together because of some divine spark inside of us. So we're really very fortunate. And I'm actually getting a little teary-eyed talking about this. So, excuse me. Okay, so shielding and grounding. So you've done that. Affirmations and meditation. Okay. So I am definitely a technical, like, caveman. I'm not really into technology very much. And I would highly recommend doing this, though. Making your own affirmations and your own meditation. Okay. So right now I'm using OBS Studio to do my videos. There's lots of different ways you can do this. You can just put your phone on camera and just record your voice. And I would prepare for this 100%. So I'm going to start with the affirmations. There is an amazing book. I'm sure there's quite a few of you out there that will have heard of The Artist's Way. In The Artist's Way, they talk about doing something called your morning pages. And the idea is that when we wake up in the morning, we have a lot of garbled messages in our brain, which I don't necessarily agree with, but because I think that we do transit between consciousness, between our dream time and our awake time, body awake time. But anyway, the morning pages is basically just a stream of consciousness writing for a minimum, I think, of 3 full pages. And you're just supposed to write down what's going on in your head so that you can clear out nagging thoughts and be able to be much more sort of on it for the day. So I love this technique. When I was working as a therapist, it was something that I recommended to my clients a lot. And I would definitely recommend doing this when you're doing your affirmations and your own self-guided meditation, because it really helps you sort out what you want to talk about. So do your morning pages, so to speak, and you don't have to do it in the morning when you're doing this, just, if you can get some undisturbed time to write down, and it's literally stream of consciousness, whatever is going on in your head. So if you're saying like basketball, toothpaste, tuna fish, basketball, if that's all you're saying, just write down those words, basketball, tuna fish, basketball. So affirmations are affirming statements, in case you don't, and this is a newer word for you, it's affirming statements about yourself. So do you remember, if you're of a certain age, you might remember Jack Handy from Saturday Night Live, back in the day when it was pretty funny. And was it Jack Handy? No, that was more like Confucius, and I can't remember who it was. It was one of the characters by Al Franken. Oh dear. Anyway, it was I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. Was like the big, hook that he always used to say. And in a nutshell, that's kind of affirmations. It's you making positive, affirmative statements about yourself. So confirmation is when somebody confirms an idea, but an affirmation is when you present a positive, affirming idea. So I used to recommend that people listen to other people's affirmations and guided meditations. But then when I found out about the hijacking of the New Age movement, actually not even hijacking, the creation of the New Age movement was for the purposes of bringing in a softer version of Satanism and Luciferianism to the public at large. So sorry, but that's kind of what's going on there. And I will definitely give proof for that in upcoming episodes. So I do not recommend doing affirmations, other people's affirmations. I do not recommend doing other people's meditations. I absolutely wouldn't do that now. I only do everything for me. When in doubt, go within. You were made perfect by Source God. You were made perfect. There's nothing that you need in life that you don't have within you. And I mean that not in, a practical sense of like food and shelter and what have you, but when it comes to outside confirmation or outside affirmations or all of that stuff, you're perfect package. If anything feels like a challenge, it's because you needed to be challenged in that way. So that said, it is all will always be my recommendation to go with it. So with affirmations, once you've done your morning pages, so to speak, your 3 pages of stream of consciousness, it's really important to give yourself a list of your positive traits. So think about the things that you really like about yourself. And again, some of us, it's really, really hard to be gentle with ourselves and be positive about ourselves, but I would pretend that you are just a bit of play acting for the moment, but pretend that you are talking about your best friend. Or imagine that your best friend is writing about you. And these things don't have to be provable. So, you can say things that you do acknowledge about yourself. Like, say if you did win, I don't know, say a public speaking award, you can say, I know I'm a good speaker. But I think it's the kinds of things you want to put in affirmations are things like, I care about myself. I eat good food and give myself enough rest. Or I do my best to, if you're unable to. If that's not a truth, then you can say, like, I do my best. When possible, I do this, I do that. I am enough. I am loved. I have an incredible human body that I am proud of. When I exercise, I bring endorphins to my body and feel better. Those are great examples of affirmations. So they're not necessarily provable things about you, boastful things, but nourishing things that are either intentions. They can be true about yourself, but it's not about bragging, and it's not about only focusing on the things that you're good at, but acknowledging yourself as a capable and mature caretaker to your own body. And imagine that your body is like this very important vessel, and that you are acknowledging how good you are at looking after this thing. So it is a very much putting yourself outside of yourself for the purpose of being able to hear your own voice telling you loving, positive, and motivating things. The affirmations, number 1, the intention, when you do them yourself, the first thing is the intention to heal is yourself healing yourself. So it's like this beautiful fold back of, like, it's like you double your energy right there. The other piece that comes from that is there is something really profoundly healing about hearing your own voice saying loving things about yourself. And I don't know who's listening. I don't know who you are, but I'm pretty sure that most people out there don't sit around saying loving, positive things to themselves about themselves. It is incredibly healing. It is incredibly touching. It's very emotional, and it is very powerful to do that. So, number 1, affirmations. Okay. Number 2, is the meditation, the self-guided meditation. Sorry, I'm just going to shuffle around a little bit in my bag for a minute because my phone is dying. But the self-guided meditation is the next super important piece to go along with your affirmations. A lot of people feel that affirmations and meditation kind of go hand in hand. And a lot of people that make affirmations and meditation CDs will do both together. Or if, it's not uncommon to see a meditation CD by someone, and they often do affirmations as well. Excuse me. With meditation, it's kind of up to you. As a therapist, I ended up doing a lot of meditation at the end of my sessions. Quite a few of my clients found it very relaxing and very comforting to have a meditation before they sort of finished the session and went out to the big world and had a whole week or 2 weeks or whatever until we had another session. And so what I would do, it's really crucial. There are some really important do's and don'ts with meditation. So number one, keep it short. Between 5 and 10 minutes is plenty. And keep it personal when with self guided meditations. It's really, I think it's more effective when it's personal. And I wouldn't recommend that you do this for other people. I think it's really important that people do this for themselves. Again, there's something incredibly healing about listening to your own voice saying positive and loving things about yourself. It's just so incredibly healing. With guided meditations, a really good way to start is with acknowledging the breath going in and out of the nose. You can, a lot of people like to take note of the temperature of the air in your nostrils. And that's something that I would also do when I was doing guided meditations for my clients. Bringing the consciousness from the brain down through the body. Most people know about chakras and where they're placed in the body, so that was sort of a path and a guide that I used for that for my clients. And then very often I would find a very small pinprick of light behind closed eyes, and you kind of dive into that bit of light until you break out into an environment that is comfortable. Often people, I would say, like if I was doing this for a client, I would say, find a place in nature that you feel comfortable. It might be by the sea, it could be in a forest, it could be on a mountain, it could be at a beach. It's often somewhere you've already been. It might be somewhere you've never been before. It might be something that's a fantasy or in your mind, or it could be a place that you've already been. Envision yourself sitting on the ground. Pick an object up. You put your hand on the ground and there's an object and it feels warm, and you pick it up and look at it. And, you can describe the object. You can talk about how the object makes yourself feel without describing the object, that kind of thing. And then it's really important, super extremely important, to give gratitude for the place that you're in before you leave it, to go back into your body and to return back into your body the way you came out of your body, so to speak. So if you have used a path to say, close your eyes, bring your consciousness down your body to, say, your solar plexus chakra, and from there you see a point of light behind your eyes. It becomes wider. Soon you're pushed right through this small point of light, and there's light all around you, and you realize that you're looking up at the sky, and then you look down on the ground and you realize that you're in this place of nature. So if you do it like that, for example, once you're done being in this place of nature and seeing all around you, you might want to walk around and see things and sit down and find something or whatever. When you're done, you want to wrap things up. You sit down again. You look back up at the sky where it's very, very bright. You start to fall back into yourself. The sky becomes smaller and smaller, little pinprick. Suddenly, you're in a dark place. Your consciousness is moving back up your body, past your solar plexus, your throat chakra, your third eye, out the top of your head, and boom, here you are in the room. And seal it up with the shielding, and there you go. That's a really brief one. That's a very fast version of a type of meditation that I would do. The other thing you can do is actually listen to somebody else's guided meditation and then re-record it, your own version of it, with your own voice. So if you are looking for sort of like tips, go around, have a look, listen, research, but I do want to recommend that you do your own. when it comes to meditations, and especially mass meditations, when people call for many, many people meditating, and I actually did a video on my YouTube channel about a mass meditation, the lunar eclipse. And I did warn when I did that video that nobody should be following a set meditation, especially for mass meditations, because the people that begin that send out the call for the mass meditations are the ones that are setting the intention. And you don't know what that intention is because you're probably not the one who sent out the call for the mass meditation. So when you create a meditation, you're the one setting the intention. And there's more safety in that, considerably more safety in that. So when you are looking to bolster yourself while you're dealing with your awakening, I really want to recommend that you are looking at keeping it within. So not going without, not going to others for support, but really learning how to do this yourself. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this up. I want to talk a little bit about some upcoming things and some things, like some stuff to look out for in the future. I am extremely interested in astrology. It's been more than a hobby for most of my grown-up life. Since finding out, though, that most New Age practices have been hijacked and are being used as sort of a diversion from our own ascension, I've never done astrology for money, but I did want to offer a playbook of astrology to people that are looking to better understand themselves. So what I mean by playbook is sort of like who am I and how do I work? Like a manual. So for example, I am an Aries rabbit. And so there are parts of my personality that are very Aries, and there are parts of my personality that are very rabbit. And in order for me to understand who I am and how I react to things, and it basically, in finding out more about these two particular signs, I have been able to understand my own autopilot function better. So when you react to things without sort of going with your higher self, but your sort of knee-jerk reactions, or just sort of when you're just kind of being sloppy and you're not at your best, the way you are is basically what has been sort of put upon you. It's sort of like a personality grid that's being put upon you by the Matrix, for lack of a better term. I know a lot of people have seen that movie, so it's pretty easy to kind of explain things using that term. But so we've been set up to believe that this whole physical world that we're in works a certain way, and the stars and this and that and all these things line up that are lined up in a certain way the moment we're born. When we touch air, we've been sort of baptized in that mathematical algorithm. And if you know what it means, if you know what personality pieces have been sort of bestowed upon you, that have been sort of blessed upon you in that moment, on your physical body for this incarnation, then it really helps you understand yourself in this incarnation better. So we are, like I have said earlier, we are souls having a human experience. But when we are born into this body, we are sort of baptized in a particular sequence of traits bestowed upon us by the system that we've been born into, by the planetary system. So if you understand what that all means, it helps you function better. I don't know if I explained that very well, so I'm going to have to work on that, on the explanation part of it, and then we'll get into it later. So all that to say, I am planning on working on a website, an accompanying website to go with this podcast. And on it, I will have some aspects of astrology on there, and I will also be offering a Reiki level 1 course, an online course. And I will not be offering level 2 or the master level, as I do not think that it is a good idea to be dealing with other people's energy. But in Reiki level 1, as far as you get is self-care, care for plants and animals, and that's pretty much it. And what's really cool is when you get attuned to Reiki the first time, it is really powerful. If you take level 2 and the master level, you experience an attunement each time, but I've had it on good authority that I, as well as many other people, feel the most effect the first level that you do, the first time you're attuned. And again, after having understood what the New Age movement really truly is, I do not recommend offering other people Reiki or necessarily taking Reiki from anyone offering level 2 or master level. And I really wouldn't perform Reiki on other people at this point. But I do think that under the within the idea of self-care and bolstering oneself, it makes perfect sense to me to learn how to give yourself Reiki, how to give your food Reiki, how to Reiki your water, how to Reiki your pets. Animals don't have the same, they don't carry the same energy that we do. Cats are interesting, but domestic cats, but other animals are not, for the most part. They just do not, they're not going to stick around for Reiki if they get a bad vibe off of you. If anything, if you Reiki with your pet, I say if you give your pet Reiki, I think it'd just be kind of lovely and kind of sweet, because animals are just really pure source. You know, I hate to kind of be a bit flippant about plants, as they are also vulnerable creatures, but if you were to Reiki a plant with ill intent, I think that the consequences would be much less than an animal or a person. So my apologies to plants, but that is what I do think. So we are just over the hour, and this is probably a perfect time to say goodnight and hope that you guys have an amazing week. And I really hope to have some questions next week, but if I don't, that's okay, because I've got lots to talk about. That's, yeah, I guess that's really it. I'm trying to think if there's anything more I want to say before I wrap it up, but I kind of don't think that's the case. And so I am going to leave you with a cool song that I totally love, and wish you all a wonderful week, and stay warm, and God bless. And thanks for listening. This has been Serotonin with the Serotonin Receptor. Good night, y'all.
I am thy captain. We shall be flying today at altitudes unlimited, and at a speed never known to thee before. Flying time is not considered, for thou art now in the realm known as eternity. A beautiful day without a cloud.
It has been a pleasure to have you today on Interworld Airlines Flight FINAL. We will not invite you to fly with us again, for this is your final trip. You are now entering your eternal home. We have not served a meal in flight today because you have all been reserved a place at the great feast that will soon be spread at the marriage supper of the Lamb. Christ himself will serve you, and there will be plenty for everyone, for there is an
dans un eau d'oiseau marchand et des pensées dans le rêve qui est pourtant moche en vrac. Le saut dans les bras de terre. Aucun pour regarder quand vous n'êtes pas vers son page que je vous verrai.
Fasten your seatbelts, please.
World Airlines Flight FINAL non-stop supersonic service to the New Jerusalem is now ready for boarding at the gate of death. Passengers holding confirmed reservations for this flight may proceed immediately to this gate through the blood sprinkled concourse. Because the exact time of departure is uncertain, you are urged to remain ready at any moment. Thank you.